Turbo Kid is a dystopian, BMX-powered, journal-updating, gore-fest simulator Metroidvania set in a post-apocalyptic world called the Wasteland in the distant future of 1997, where water is scarce and people scavenge and scrounge whatever resources remain just to survive. It's a sequel to the 2015 movie also titled Turbo Kid, a sci-fi superhero dark comedy love story. Also, there's a comic book series and a music video that serve as prequels. Yet, despite its multimedia barrage, I'd never heard of this franchise until the game came out. But because it's a Metroidvania, I had no other choice but to run the risk of spoiling the movie by jumping headfirst into the latest installment of the Turbo Kid saga. And man, did it not take long for the game to spoil the movie. It literally starts with the movie's last lines of dialogue, and the preceding tutorial does a little spoiling too. And then there are the post-boss fight cutscenes. Those just spoil the shit out of the movie. I guess what I'm saying is, you better watch the movie first if you don't want it spoiled. But for those of you like me who just want to play the game because it's a new Metroidvania, I can confirm it has a solid narrative you can enjoy without having first seen the movie. You play as the titular Turbo Kid, sometimes non-titularly called just the Kid, who's fallen into a land called Middle Waste. But before he can get picked apart by some thugs, a local named Naomi rescues and nurses him back to health. Once awake, the Kid discovers a thriving town, a rarity in the wasteland, called New Hope. He also discovers he's trapped in Middle Waste, with his only exit from this sequestered land barred by an ominous door. The only way to open this enormous door is to find 4 powerful weapon chips. With his objective set, the Kid races off on his bike to confront the many dangers of Middle Waste, one of which is a cult that seems to be growing by the day. That's a solid setup if I've ever heard one, but is the rest of the experience as solid? Let's find out.
Combat.
We got ourselves a real run-and-gun Metroidvanias, boys! I know run-and-gun MVs aren't new or even rare, but it seems as of late most MVs combat are melee-based, so I always get excited when your primary attack is gun. And I mean a real gun. None of that Rebel Transmute or Astronite bullshit. I want to blast things from across the screen, the way the Founding Fathers intended. Ranged combat's your primary means of attack, but it's not the only way the Kid can bring the pain. Enter the machete, your melee option and the best way to bust up debris and dismember jabronis. And how could we forget the Kid's trusted steed? With enough speed, you can run idiots over or fling your bike at them for extra hilarity. I know I called the game a run and gun, but the Kid doesn't actually have a gun. He has the Turbo Glove, a delicious homage to the NES's infamously awful Power Glove.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
With the Turbo Glove, the Kid can shoot in 8 directions and fire a devastating charge shot that just absolutely explodes people, man. If you've seen the movie, you know what this thing's capable of. These thugs literally have no chance. And that's kind of the beauty of Turbo Kid's combat. You never don't have the advantage against most goons. Aside from boss encounters and robotic enemies, this game's a complete power trip. The most thugs can do to you is hit you with a shield or bat, chuck a brick, or charge you with some makeshift spear. All you typically have to do is unload on them from a safe distance until you blow their freaking heads off. Speaking of which, you can literally blow enemies' freaking heads off and then chuck their heads for massive damage. I suppose you get bonus damage for demoralization. I know I'd be pretty bummed if someone pitched my homie's head at me at 90 miles an hour. Unlike the movie, the Turbo Glove in this game doesn't constantly run out of juice. Regular and charged blasts from the glove's default setting costs 0 turbo energy. So feel free to dispense plasmic justice with extreme prejudice. Weapon chips, on the other hand, do require energy to use. But replenishing energy is as easy as doling out more plasmic justice with more extreme prejudice. You can swap weapon chips at any time by using the right analog stick, and each weapon chip has different combat and environmental utilities. The latter I'll touch on in the abilities and platforming section. As alluded to earlier, the boss fights have a little bit of bite to them, at least when compared to your run and gun thug or robot. There are only 4, maybe 4.5 bosses, and most were legit encounters. The exception being the skate park boss. That one just didn't hit for me. I beat it first try and just didn't think it was very fun. But the rest, loved them, with my favorite being against Silver Ghost. Great fight with a great story to tell. Beautiful. And that pretty much wraps up combat. The game isn't too challenging, but I don't think it was supposed to be. It was meant to be a power trip, and to that end, it was successful. I never didn't like splatting some poor thug from across the screen. Look at that. Never even stood a chance. And the way the kid moves and can lock himself in place for better aiming feels pretty great. And you have options. You want to get close and personal? Slice a goon up with your machete. Want to give them a funny cause of death on their death certificate? Launch your bike at them. Cutting goons up with buzzsaws, frying them with lightning, melting them with acidic goo. We have fun here.
Abilities. Platforming.
Most of the kid's abilities are as bog standard as they come, namely the air dash, roll, and wall jump. They're all useful and great additions to his repertoire, but you've seen these in pretty much every Metroidvania. I will say I like the kid's multi-directional air dash doubling as a double jump, but again, we've even seen that recently in Biomorph. My analysis on that in the top right corner, if you're interested. His other utility-based abilities are really just glorified keys. I'm talking specifically about the weapon chips you get for defeating the bosses. The lightning shot opens up specific doors, the buzzsaw breaks specific barriers, the rockets blow up specific walls. If these abilities didn't also double as attacks, they'd be pretty disappointing. That's not to say Turbo Kid doesn't have some unique abilities. The bike alone is worth the price of admission. It makes basic traversal that much more interesting, and ramping up verts and using half pipes to get to out of reach areas is always a blast. It might come across as a little contrived outside of the skate park, but I don't care. It's still awesome. And then you get the spike wheels that allow you to do some gravity-defying shenanigans. Really, this bike is just a whole lot of fun. I actually went into Turbo Kid with some reservations because I thought the bike gimmick would be utilized too much, ultimately compromising exploration and that traditional Metroidvania feel. Much like how the bike gimmick affected Laika aged through Blood. So much so that that game barely feels like a Metroidvania. I'm happy to report Turbo Kid uses its bike as more of a garnish than a gimmick, asking players only to whip out the BMX at opportune or specific moments, which in turn upholds the integrity of that traditional Metroidvania feel. I guess that's just my long-winded way of saying Turbo Kid plays like a traditional Metroidvania with a cool bike ability. Controlling the bike feels pretty good too. Hitting verts and gaining momentum in the half pipes feels weighty and natural. Well, natural enough for a video game. What I'm saying is, all those California Games sessions are finally going to pay off. And the best part is you don't have to keep track of your bike, which was a real concern I had. I seriously thought I'd have to lug this thing around or remember where I parked it and run back to retrieve it. I don't know, I'm neurotic like that. But nope. There's a clever in-game reason why the bike can appear and reappear at will. So you don't have to worry about your bike's location. That's one less thing to concern myself with. The location of a pixelated bike that doesn't exist. Yeah. Turbo Kid's platforming is nothing to write home about. I can't recall a single platforming section that was difficult, challenging, or unique outside of anything that involved the bike. I'm not saying its platforming's bad. The kid controls well, and its platforming's completely serviceable. Just not memorable or very engaging. Turbo Kid's challenge comes from a combination of combat encounters and navigating its labyrinthine biomes. So don't expect your platforming chops to be tested.
Progression.
In terms of progression, Turbo Kid lies closer to the Metroid side than the Vania side on the Metroidvania spectrum. This means the RPG elements are pretty non-existent. No leveling, no stats, no armor sets or different types of weapons. You start with the Turbo Glove and you end with the Turbo Glove. But I mean, what else could you need?
It's so bad.
It'd have been nice to get damage upgrades or something, like how the knight from Hollow Knight got pale ore for the blacksmith to upgrade his nail. But because the game is already such a power trip, I can see how making the glove even stronger might have been overkill. You can find items to increase your HP and turbo energy, but that's it for stat increases. As for player expression, that comes in the form of cartridges. Your Turbo Glove comes with cartridge slots, which the number of slots can be increased as you progress. And cartridges are exactly what you think they are. Charms, relics, badges, pick your poison. And they do what you'd expect them to do. alter your character in different ways, such as adding more bike damage, making the kid resistant to specific kinds of damage, or finding more currency while exploring. Currency in Turbo Kid is called scraps, and you use scraps at stores to purchase upgrades and cartridges. Stores can be found in the game's hub town called New Hope, but the twist is stores aren't given to you. You have to unlock them by doing certain things, like buying a vendor's trust or completing side quests as you explore. It's a great and diegetic way to gatekeep the more powerful cartridges by requiring players to have progressed so far in the game before they can unlock certain vendors. And that's it for progression. No Vania things here like leveling or gear. The only things you can increase are your HP, turbo energy, and cartridge slots for more player expression. And by doing side quests, you can unlock shops with more and better stock. Pretty simple.
Exploration.
Alright, now we're getting into the divisive stuff. Turbo Kid does something I think players are either gonna love or hate, and that's sacrifice biome quantity for narrative focus. As anybody familiar with my channel can probably guess, I agree with the dev's choice of narrative over biome quantity, only because they did the narrative so well. But I can definitely see how people would hate that they chose story over more biomes, or at the very least, they would prefer more biomes over a focus on narrative. I'll dive deeper into what all this means in the atmosphere and narrative section. For now, all you need to know is that there are very few biomes in Turbo Kid, like maybe 5 total that you can explore. And the reason for this is that each biome comes with a micro story that reinforces the game's overarching narrative. Thus, the team decided to focus on narrative-rich experiences rather than biome diversity to keep the narrative tight. That's not to say the biomes on offer don't have their own unique feel and look, but I'll save that for the atmosphere and narrative section too. As far as exploration goes, what you need to know is what Turbo Kid lacks in biome quantity, it more than makes up for in biome size. The biomes in this game are huge. I'm talking gigantic. Turbo Kid's biome sizes might be on par with cathedrals. These biomes just don't quit. And each is a vast maze with tunnels and hallways that snake and slither in every direction. Though there's not a lot of verticality to the level designs, at least it didn't feel like there was due to the claustrophobic nature of the seemingly never-ending tunnel systems that were this game's biomes. I'm not hating on the biomes or the designs, I'm just calling them as I see them. Now, you might ask me, surely there's lots to discover with biomes so large, to which I'd reply, of course there is. And don't call me Shirley. Hidden within these labyrinthine tunnels lie secrets galore. False walls, secret tunnels, utility-gated spots storing goodies, and pathways hidden in plain sight. Observant players will most definitely be rewarded for their keen eyes. And what will they be rewarded with? HP and turbo energy increases, cartridges, NPCs with side quests, boxes with tons of scrap, and the ever-elusive cassette tape. Each tape provides a track that you can play at any time, overriding the game's current background music. Finding these cassettes wasn't something I cared too much about, but those suckers are hidden pretty well if you're interested. There are also lore items to find in the form of short stories and verses. These don't directly contribute to the kid's growth and are more for flavor text and world building. The short stories were a treat because each described a real-life sci-fi movie. It was fun to guess which movie the story was parodying, my favorite being the short story called The 3 Shells.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells. I can see how that could be confusing.
Verses were like psalms or chapters out of the cult's Bible. Collecting them doesn't do anything other than provide insight on the cult's religion. It's interesting if you're interested, and finding the verses was kinda unique. Verses were dropped by thugs, and they were only dropped by thugs spouting out fanatical nonsense. I don't know, it was just a cool way to collect the verses. The last thing you can collect is actually pretty rad. It's comic book pages that, once assembled, becomes a full-fledged comic book you can view in-game. And this comic was created by Jike Dion, the Turbo Kid movie's storyboard artist and the main illustrator for the Turbo Kid comics. It can't get more legit than that. And that sums up exploration. Biomes are few, but what's there is big. And with big biomes come big secrets with lots of things to collect. Thankfully, there's a fast travel system in place to help navigate these gigantic biomes. More of a waypoint system really, with not enough waypoints. Biomes this big should have more waypoints or a better fast travel system. Backtracking could be a chore a lot of the time, and late game cleanup wasn't something I was willing to do because backtracking was just so unappetizing. I've heard criticisms that the biomes feel pretty empty, probably referring to the lack of enemies. I personally didn't see that. I thought there were plenty of enemies in the game. The issue might be that enemies don't respawn regularly, at least they didn't for me. If I splattered a jabroni, they'd be gone for a while because there was really no way to reset them. There's no load screens in this game while traveling. You can go from biome to biome seamlessly. It really does feel like one big interconnected world. And saving doesn't respawn enemies like it does in Souls-likes. You just kind of plop down on a couch, play your Game Boy, and return to business. No loading necessary. And can we talk about the absolute crazy amount of save points in this game? There were times I saved at a couch, and then I literally walked 20 paces and found another couch to save at. This game's difficulty doesn't warrant having this many save points, but I guess I can't really complain about it. I'm not going to walk into someone's house and get angry or disappointed because they have too many couches in their living room. It's just kind of weird. I mean, I'd be a little distraught if I walked into someone's living room and there weren't enough couches. That'd be weird and uncomfortable. I'd be like, dude, where can I sit? And he'd just stare at me and shrug. So I'd have to stand around awkwardly while everyone else was having a good time on the couches, smoking and cracking jokes, until it was finally time to leave for the Disturbed concert. But I'm in a bad mood because my legs are tired. What was I talking about?
Atmosphere. Narrative.
As much as I like the other aspects of Turbo Kid, atmosphere and narrative are its greatest qualities. And I think it's because the devs stuck so close to the source material. For starters, they brought in the film's composer, Lamato, and as you'd expect, he does a phenomenal job at recreating the 80s synthwave sound that the movie's so well known for. Obviously, he freaking made the soundtrack. His music just meshes so well with the game's pixelated aesthetic. It's not something I can articulate or explain. You'll just have to play and experience it yourself to fully comprehend how great it feels. Other than the over-the-top gore, another fun facet taken from the film is the kid's use of a journal. As you progress, the kid updates his journal by drawing and coloring and writing in it. This is such a great touch. I loved getting new journal entries just so I could see the crude drawing the kid made. And everything he writes is written in his voice, meaning regardless of the atrocities he experiences, there's always a brightness and youthful naivete about how he describes things. I'm not one for reading while playing video games, but I couldn't help myself with Turbo Kid. It's just that charming. Something else that really stuck out were the game's lively backgrounds. No matter what biome you were visiting, there was always something interesting happening in the environment. Not so much in the sewers, but that had a whole other thing going on that kept your interest. It's ironic how alive this dead world felt, with robots digging in the trash or junkies and punks tweaking and goofing off. As claustrophobic as these biomes are, you rarely ever felt isolated. All in all, the atmosphere felt perfect for the tone and setting the devs were looking to create. And I fully realize I'm completely biased in this take because I love the 80s so freaking much. It's when I was born and raised, after all. The narrative's next level for a Metroidvania. I know Souls-like narratives are beloved for their mystique and depth, but sometimes I don't want to search for a good story or have to do homework to understand what's going on. Sometimes I just want a straightforward tale that's easy to follow. And in that sense, Turbo Kid delivers. There's so much character in its characters, and its writing and dialogue are so good. There's a clear overarching story with a great message and a clear, sorta, 3-act structure that culminates with a satisfying and bittersweet resolution. And its message and theme are reinforced by the micro-stories told throughout the game's biomes. I don't want to delve too deeply into the narrative specifics because watching it unfold is half the game's enjoyment. I'll just say its overarching theme is about coping with loss, and each biome tells a complete tale with a beginning, middle, and end that explores different coping mechanisms. Delusion, drugs, escapism, suicidal tendencies and ideation, and even forfeiting your free will to a messianic figure because you're so desperate to be fixed. Each mechanism only provides false hope and ultimately fails, serving only as distractions from the real solution. And the real solution is New Hope, the name of the game's hub town. Named so because the only way to move forward after tragedy is
with the power of friendship! Yeah! Right!
Listen, I'm being a little facetious here, but don't think for 1 second I don't eat this shit up. I don't care how cliche it is. I'm gonna love it each and every time friendship prevails over evil. It was rad in the 80s, it's rad now, and it'll be rad forever. There's only a few more things I want to say about the narrative, but I don't really know how to fit them in, so I'm just gonna shotgun them. Firstly, there are 2 endings in the game, and though the good ending is fantastic, it's not hard to get. There's no game-spanning collectathon or anything like that. You'll pretty much figure it out when it's time. Secondly, there are emotes you can use while talking to people. There are a few instances when you have to use these emotes, but any other time, it's just something goofy you can do to see how NPCs react. Basically, if you're using these emotes, you're going to be saying either yes or no. Anything else is just silly. I want to say it was underutilized gameplay-wise, but I didn't really care about it. And lastly, you can choose to either kill the bosses or show mercy. And since I can never bring myself to kill things when given the option, I'll never know what killing them does to the narrative. Heck, even to this day, I still haven't done the genocide run on Undertale. And I never will. Alright, this is your spoiler warning. It's going to be a super short one this time around. Go to this timestamp to fast travel to my final thoughts.
Spoilers.
I'm not even going to do my stupid whose line is it anyway line. I'll keep this short and sweet. I'm looking for help. I found some things in the game I have no idea what to do with, and I wanted to see if anyone knows anything about them. First up are these weird circles. There's a few in the game, and I have no clue what to do with them. I don't even know if they do anything. If any of you all figure it out, let me know in the comments. And lastly, what is this? This statue has lived rent-free in my head ever since I found it. And I have no idea what he's all about. I found a secret wall with a carving of what looks like the statue with a cube and stars underneath it. Obviously, these things correlate somehow, but how, I don't know. It's literally driving me insane. So, if any of you all figure it out, put it in the comments so I can finally move on with my life.
Conclusion.
Turbo Kid's a good Metroidvania in my book. I think its biomes are too big, which makes backtracking a freaking chore, especially because its fast travel system isn't the best, and I can see why people would want another biome or two. But these are small gripes for a game that does so many other things so well. Its run and gun combat feels great, and I love the power trip it gives me. Its world's well fleshed out, containing environments that feel alive with so much to drink in. Its synthwave soundtrack and pixel aesthetic create an atmosphere I can't get enough of. And the narrative is absolutely top tier stuff, teeming with fun characters, excellent writing, and an optimistic message that somehow both undercuts and enhances its goofy and dark tone. Should you play Turbo Kid? I think so. Metroidvania vets might find its NPC-heavy world and BMX mechanic refreshing, and Metroidvania noobs will appreciate the adventure's grandness, enjoy its simple power-trippy combat, and find its story interesting. With about a 10-hour runtime, I'd say put Turbo Kid at the top of your MV list if you're looking to get lost in its biomes and its story. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little saddened to see the tale of Middle Waste come to an end. It's definitely a story that resonated with me, and I think it might resonate with you too.